We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Is President Joe Biden pushing America into a war with Russia to distract from issues on the home front? Well, that's a question that sadly, many people are now considering a possibility. Will Putin oblige? And what's the latest situation? Well, to help us figure this out, we're joined by our expert in all things military defense, former Undersecretary of Defense Controller, Dave Patterson. Welcome back to the show, Dave. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mark. Happy to be with you.
Now, Dave, I think what we're seeing here is a back and forth escalation of letters and demands and briefings, with neither side really willing to make any concessions. And Vladimir Putin, he recently released his thoughts on this. What did he say of it, and what did he make of it?
Well, I think that most commentators that listened to Putin's press conference after his nearly 5-hour meeting with Hungary's Prime Minister Orban would probably say it was more of a rehash of his standard set of grievances. It was sort of like a Festivus celebration with the airing of grievances. But Putin is upset by a number of issues, and he calls the West out principally for, as he said, indelicately, screwing over Russia. And he primarily accuses the West of ignoring Russia's security demands. He talked about George W. Bush's administration quitting the anti-ballistic missile treaty, and he maintains that that caused Russia to develop new missiles of their own. And of course, he talked about his standards saw the expansion of NATO, and he's quite keen that NATO does not expand. But, he offered no solutions to the stalemate between U.S., NATO, and Russia. And, there are certain things that he also leaves out. He leaves out, for example, any mention of Stalin's systematic starving of millions of Ukrainians in 1932 and 33. He doesn't mention the 1994 Budapest Memorandum that established Ukraine's independence in exchange for Kiev giving up nuclear warheads that were stored there. Russia, incidentally, signed that memorandum. But I think in total, if you look at the upside of his views, he did suggest that a Russian invasion of the Ukraine might not be imminent, as the Biden administration suggests.
I mean, there really is a concerted effort from all nations around the world here to join forces against the perceived Russian aggression. But they are also forceful, as you point out here, that the idea that Ukraine should become a NATO member. And as far as I can tell, that really is the root cause of all this. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's not clear to me that everyone is on the same page with either Ukraine or Georgia becoming NATO members. I think that there are people, Germans principally, who might not think that was a good idea. And all 30 members of NATO must be in agreement to bring on new members. So it's not clear to me that there's this unanimity of enthusiasm for Ukraine becoming a member of NATO.
Now, what's the European Union situation? Are they pushing for Ukrainian membership to NATO?
I would say that generally Europe is ambivalent about NATO membership. What they are not ambivalent about is the fact that Ukraine should be able to carry on trade, and within the European Union, they think that the Ukraine ought to have the ability to move toward a more Eurocentric position for the country.
You wrote a fascinating article on LibertyNation.com recently that discussed whether Joe Biden was in danger of pushing America into a war. Can you give us a brief rundown of your reasoning here, please?
I think that what's happening here is that the Biden administration is very much using a lot of very bellicose threats, and the fact that they've put on alert so many of the U.S. forces. They talk about blunting the Russian expansion into eastern Ukraine. They very seldom talk about specific initiatives to solve the stalemate. In fact, in that regard, they're pretty much like Putin. But I think that most recently when Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, invoked the number 5 case for NATO. And that, of course, is a paragraph that says if one member of NATO is attacked, then all will come to its aid. The only issue there is that Ukraine, as we know, is not a member of NATO.
I mean, I look at our political leaders, all around the world, Joe Biden, Boris Johnson, Justin Trudeau, and others, and they're all beset by major difficulties on the domestic front. Now, is it possible that they're letting these domestic threats to their positions and agendas impact their decision-making with regards to the Russia-Ukraine situation? As in, they need some kind of win, and there's no way they can get it at home, so they're looking abroad to try and bring some credibility or power status back to themselves.
I think that's right. I think that's what you normally would do is, take the limelight off of the problems that you have and put it somewhere else. And in this case, President Putin has offered them an excellent target.
One more question for you, Dave. You've noted earlier that Putin has an ally in Chinese Premier Xi Jinping. And of course, Putin, he's attending the Winter Olympics over in China at the moment. What does this message send to the West?
Well, I think it sends the message that Russia and China are growing more close together. I think that more importantly, you have combined exercises between Russian and Chinese Navy and ground forces, more exercises than we've seen historically. I think that all of these things combine to certainly reinforce the impression that they are very close allies. And of course, that creates a problem for the West, and particularly the United States. And I think that it's significant that President Putin would go there for the Winter Olympics.
I'm sure that's all just worry because obviously the Defense Department lets us know that climate change is, of course, the bigger threat. Dave Patterson, thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Mark. You've got it right on climate change.
You're listening to Liberty Nation Radio, heard across the Radio America network from our flagship station in the nation's capital, WWRC in Washington, D.C. Further down the line, we discuss affirmative action for the next Supreme Court justice. But after this short break, we return to find out whether the GOP has a fifth column. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fight for freedom.
Maybe tracking polls sponsored by Liberty Nation for Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I
others.
can do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Get noticed. We're doing it. Rock on.